Friends, would you pray with me? O Holy One, Ancient of Days, ever present, take our lips and speak with them. Take our minds and think with them. Take our hands and work with them. And take our hearts and set them on fire with love for you and all of creation. Amen. So it's Halloween, early 1980s. I'm 6 years old. Don't do the math. And my life has changed in a twinkling of an eye. An incredible flash of light. There show up on my front yard the entire cast of Star Wars. The original characters, all of them for real. My dad's lab at MIT, all of his lab mates, in only the wisdom that MIT engineers could bring about, completely replicated the entire cast of Star Wars and brought them on Halloween evening to my front yard. R2-D2, C-3PO, and of course Darth Vader. Now even my dad's co-director, George Moody, was Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan and Darth had a lightsaber duel right in front of us. You can imagine I was the talk of the town for the next week or a year at my first grade that year. Star Wars had shown up, and the light transformed all of us. Now, as kids, many of us wanted to be more like Luke Skywalker or Princess Leia, of course, that had merit. But I think secretly a lot of us wanted to be more like Darth Vader. I'm looking at you, Austin. Have you ever wished to be Darth Vader? You ever wished to be as bad as Saul? You ever wished to be someone who's had a complete 180-degree turnaround? To have that clarity that comes with being blinded by the light? You ever long for a singular moment in your faith life where everything has changed in the twinkling of an eye? Transformation from total depravity, change from evil to good, villain to superhero, Saul to Paul. I know I have at times. I remember thinking it would be nice to have a clear-cut and powerful faith journey, a nice elevator speech about how Jesus had transformed my life from the way I used to be to the way I am. A friend of mine, post-college, named Topper, had long braided hair, rode a motorcycle, and had such a story. He was crazy on fire for God, and he talked about his road to Damascus experience, one that transformed him from a wild living soul to a faithful soul, as he would describe it. One could imagine the prodigal son, Topper, like Saul, in comparison to me, the boring older brother, leaning in judgment toward the prodigal. But of course, my longings at those times to be as bad as Saul, I think, come from a misreading of this commonly understood text that is before us today. One that lifts up as paramount a singular moment of conversion, and one that underemphasizes a lifetime of faith and doubt unfolding, perhaps daily conversions. Our overfamiliarity with this well-known story that's become a commonly used metaphor may tend to mislead others of us at times. The road to Damascus may be more about a call than a conversion, more about direction than about dogma. Did you know, Tom, that there is no horse in this story? Artists, again, yes, like Caravaggio and Michelangelo, have long inserted a horse in this context, but it never appears in the Bible, nor does the word conversion. It only appears in the headings, which were inserted long after the original letters of the Luke Acts account. First encounter that we have with Saul is, of course, the previous chapter, where he is the one who condones the stoning of Philip. He's the one who guards the coats of his murderers. Far from a passive witness to religious violence, he then enters our story this morning as the one, our text said, is still breathing threats and murders against the disciples of Jesus. Paul's very breath smells of death. This is one truly bad actor. This infamous one is shown seeking out paper trails that would lead to any connections to those followers of the way, earliest term for Christians, so that he could pursue them, hunt them down, and bring them back into Jerusalem for prosecution, more likely persecution. The present-day image of heavily armed armed right-wing vigilante paramilitary illegals rounding up asylum seekers along that construct known as the U.S.-Mexican man-made border naturally come to mind. Other white supremacist Christian terrorists who have been linked to killing time and time again around our world also come to mind. Saul is in their league. And on his way to Syria, to Damascus, that present-day city that knows too much violence over these past 8 years, on the way to Damascus, he encounters that dazzling light flash all around him. He falls to the earth, and the voice, Saul, Saul, similar voice to Moses, Moses, Abraham, Sarah, that voice of God calling. Who are you? Adonai, Paul asks. I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. Notice here, there's no distinction between the suffering of the disciples of Jesus and the suffering of Jesus. When Saul oppresses people, he oppresses Jesus. A great liberation refrain that God is present wherever there is injustice and suffers with the people is heard. But Saul here is shocked to hear this voice, not because it's a divine voice from the light, but because of its accusation. What? Me? Persecutor? How can this be possible? I'm the one who is doing your will. I am the one who is following after your ways of clearing out with righteous conviction those who are leading us astray. I am bringing with a religious duty my fervor to arrest and bring to justice those who have been violating the norms of our true faith. Saul is the one who sees those crossing that border illegally the ones to stop, lest his own way of life, his own faith, be diminished. If need be, separating families, detaining, pursuing, deporting. These so-called followers of the way had most certainly lost their way, according to Saul. They were illegal aliens of what was true and what God was trying to bring about in the world. Zeal as violence. We know it too well if we look around our world right now. Of course, there's too many examples of it. It's easy, of course, to look at the extreme cases of violence around our world as clear distortions of faith. And as we look closer to our own family of faith, it might be easier for us to see the extremely conservative side of Christianity as those contributing most to this problematic zeal. Some of us, of course, have been hurt by that side of our own faith. But I wonder if those of us in progressive Christian circles aren't entirely off the hook here. I wonder how certain privileges, including white privilege for some of us, and other cultural biases and prejudice might be blinding us to the ways that we are unintentionally persecuting others. Might we at times get so deeply zealous for a particular expression of our Christianity that we might unknowingly exclude others, even the voice of God? Might we be missing out on some of the things that the Spirit is calling us into? A more expansive version of the beloved community that knows no blue or red, that knows no walls or division. Without perhaps a craving to be as bad as Saul, might we join him in changing? We can ask what factors lead to Paul's seismic shift here. What changes him? What converts a misdirected Saul into a reoriented Paul? What knocks him off his proverbial high horse again that is not in the story? What is in the story is the core ingredients that lead to powerful change. Elements that we could take note of if we too want to nurture such change. The first is an underlying belief in a living God. Notice how Saul does not choose to question the reality behind that mysterious voice from the light. While indeed misdirected and violently zealous, he is someone who understands that God speaks into our world. This underlying belief allows him to hear and not easily dismiss the voice of the divine in Jesus saying, Saul, 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 stop it. You're hurting me when you hurt people. Instead, follow me. And of course, it is the initiative of God in Jesus who first calls name by name Saul. Not only belief in the living God is a prerequisite to change, but tuning in and listening for that divine call in the heart of every day. The second ingredient to being changed is, of course, community. The direct effect of Saul's encounter with the dazzling Jesus is incapacity. He goes from that highly capable and calculating persecutor to being unable to rise up from the ground on his own. In order to follow the divine instructions, get up, enter the city, and you will be told there what you are to do. Paul must rely on others. His very traveling companions are the one who guide him by hand into Damascus. Community allows for Paul. The third ingredient we notice is profound mutuality, reciprocity. Often when we recall this road to Damascus experience, we recall Saul. But another character who lingers behind the limelight, and his was essential to call in the transformation of Saul, is Ananias. This disciple of Jesus living in that famously straight Roman street that cuts through the heart of Damascus. Ananias is one who embodies a profound sense of mutuality. In a vision, Ananias is told to go and find Saul, but Ananias is reluctant because Saul's fierce reputation has preceded him. Adonai insists, "Go, for he is the instrument I have chosen." Ananias complies, finds Saul, lays hands on him, explains to Saul who has sent him and why he's here. And immediately, something like scales fall from Saul's eyes and his sight. His vision, his inner vision, is restored. Ananias embodies radical mutuality in his journey from rightly fearing the notorious Saul to naming him a sibling. My well-being is irrevocably tied up with yours. My liberation is dependent on yours. Ananias embodies what Dr. King calls the inescapable network of mutuality tied in a single garment of destiny. My fate is linked to yours. Often there's great power in face-to-face encounters across difference. And this is, of course, the choice of Ananias, perhaps someone who the world would label an ordinary person of faith. Perhaps not someone who is blinded by a light. Perhaps someone who always grew up going to church, always had faith in his life, didn't really question that, and yet someone who might be considered ordinary, who takes an extraordinary decision to approach Saul and shows courage in so doing. We are all given that offer to summon the courage of Ananias to see God, or at least to see the humanity in those who threaten us. Face-to-face encounters across difference, when it is safe, is increasingly rare in our country, in our world. Something that I wonder if we, as a church, are called more purposely into. Might we summon that courage of Ananias to see the good beyond the bad, to see God's image in those we consider enemies, to see the potential for conversion and change even in the places that are riddled with hatred, judgment, and fear, to see the good beyond the bad, of course, even in places like the White House or in white supremacy. Might we begin to see the inescapable network of mutuality that our liberations are linked. Ananias makes time for Saul. He prioritizes this relationship across vast differences, and not the fascinating and fun interfaith differences that we cherish at GBIO gatherings, which are indeed sacred, but those ones that we long for, those one-to-one relationships with members of the Roxbury Mosque, for instance, but rather prioritizing a fellow Christian who lands on an entirely opposite side of the political and social spectrum from us. This is admittedly much harder to do. And making time for such Sauls, Ananias creates room for the experience of the sacred. Baptism and a Eucharist meal follow, and then a commissioning to go and proclaim and embody the good news to the world. Saul is able to change through a belief in God who is active in the world, the power of community, and seeing the truth in mutuality. Author and faith leader Rachel Held Evans has been such a change agent who has relied on all three of these ingredients to change. Tragically, this powerful voice in our collective faith family died yesterday. Deeply gifted New York Times bestseller and author, Rachel died at the young age of 37 from severe complications from a simple infection. You may have encountered some of her writings, the latest, a book called Inspired, Slaying Giants, Walking on Water, and Loving the Bible Again. She was also featured in a Lenten midweek video series, Animate, that we engaged with here a few years ago at Covenant. Tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people have been taking to social media in the past 24 hours, joining in solidarity in mourning her loss, and especially feeling the brokenness left for her for her 2 children under the age of 3, and her spouse, Dan. Rachel has been a light in our world, and it is indeed a dim at this moment. She's been a bridge builder, she's been a liberator for many, and someone who did not hold back from authentically telling the world her elevator speech story about who Jesus is in her life. Having grown up in what she had called the buckle of the Bible Belt in Tennessee, Rachel knew the immersion deeply in evangelical Christianity. Yet over her 2 short but prolific careers, she became a gateway for many disaffected evangelical millennials who witnessed and took inspiration from her open journey into a more progressive, yet still grounded in theological norms reality. She left the evangelical church in 2014 because she was done trying to end the church's culture wars and wanted to focus instead on building a new community among the church's quote-unquote refugees, women who wanted to become ministers, LGBTQ Christians, those who refused to choose between their intellectual integrity and their faith. Her congregation was online, her Twitter feed became a church, a gathering place for thousands to question, find safety in their doubts, and learn to believe in new ways. She came home to find a faith home in the Episcopal Church over the past few years, and she wrote this: "For me, faith has never been a matter of conversion. It's been a matter of evolution, gradual change over time. I carry traits from every season, every age." But even in leaving behind some of the oppressive social stances of her childhood faith, Rachel always managed to promote a wide view of Christianity. It avoided the temptations, the easy ones, of pitting liberal against conservative, evangelical against mainline. And instead, in the spirit of Peter Gomes's of the world, she managed to uphold both the good and the shortcomings of both. She described finding home in the sacraments that speak profoundly of God's embodied presence in Jesus here and now. So as Saul sees the light, he also found home in those sacraments of Jesus here and now. After not eating for 3 days, that holy number that speaks of resurrection and new life in us, Saul encounters the healing touch of Christ to the hands, the feet, the body of Ananias. And his vision is restored, he's immediately baptized, and then partakes in the Eucharistic-style meal. Through the healing waters of grace, the nourishment of Christ, Saul is changed, and then he's sent out into the world in a wild new direction. A direction that is less focused on individual conversions, but far more focused on building up entire communities. These ragtag groups from Corinth to Philippi to Damascus to Rome and beyond end up against all odds to counter the very core of the empire and become seedlings of the church, a ragtag body and community of Christ that tell a powerful underdog story of God's living and present unconditional love for all of creation. So friends, like Rachel, like Saul, like Ananias, we all have powerful stories to tell. Whether we've experienced God in the blinding lights, or perhaps more like Rachel, through the day-to-day ongoing evolution of God's presence in us and in the world over time, we are beloved parts of a wider story, and we have a story to tell. I pray that whatever story we tell with our lives, that they would be authentic, and that they would leave room for doubt, and yet they would also help inspire others. Like the millions who were inspired by Rachel Held Evans, like the young evangelical named Alexandria Breithold, who wrote on Twitter, "I will sow the seed I have received. Thank you, Rachel Held Evans. I'm still a Christian thanks to you. Your legacy includes the thousands of young girls who know God doesn't hate them." Finally, in her last blog on Ash Wednesday, the beginning of the season of lament that leads to resurrection hope, Rachel wrote this quote: "Friends, death is a part of life. My prayer for you this season is that you make time to celebrate that reality and to grieve that reality and know that you are never alone. Friends, may we know that we are dust, and to dust we shall return, and we are never alone. God is with us."